there is a gentleman who's a three-in-one in the sense that he's a member of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress. He is a medical doctor. He also is one of our commanders in the butterfly unit. So he will pick and choose which part of that he emphasizes in his contribution. I will also, because he was once my leader as a premier, I'll give him a bit of 2 minutes extra from what he has actually prepared. Wangiphatha kahle. Mandla.
Okay, thank you. Our Program Director, Brigadier General Sibongiseni Dlomo, Minister for Defense and Military Veterans, Honorable Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngqabula, our stalwart and veteran of our struggle, Comrade Mek Maharaj, and other veterans, current and former members of the National and Provincial Executive Committees, and leaders of the African National Congress and Alliance at all levels, the Acting Chief of the South African National Defence Force and Acting Surgeon General of the South African Military Health Services, generals, senior officers, non-commissioned officers and members of the South African National Defence Force, Comrade Diliza Mchi, and other activists and leaders of our struggle for freedom, members of Umkhonto weSizwe Military Veterans Associations, including former commanders and commissars, and all ex-combatants of Umkhonto weSizwe, and the ex-political prisoners. The Ramlakan family, his children, his siblings, and all relatives, friends, and comrades, members of the media, and fellow South Africans. Today, South Africa bids farewell to a brave warrior of our times, Lieutenant General Vejay Ramlakan. He was popularly known simply as Vijay, Comrade Vijay, for his entire life. As all of those as all of those who knew him from his young age only remember him as an activist, but he was a father, he was a son, he was a husband, he was an uncle, he was a friend, he was a comrade, he was a leader and a mentor who meant a lot to those that knew him closely, a remarkable man who left a mark on all our hearts. Before I proceed also, may I be allowed to pay tribute to Comrade Sandy for your contribution as an operative in your own right and the sacrifices that we went through. I still remember that you were a young girl from Sydenham High School when we actually first met you, and I do understand from that time on that we've been part of the struggle. And in fact, you were working with Comrade Vijay as comrades, not just that it happened because you were near him. So we pay tribute to you and your family for bringing up all the children and the suffering that all of you have gone through. May you find peace and healing. You are our heroes. For me and many other colleagues, this marks the end of a journey we have traversed spanning over 40 years as young activists, student leaders, military combatants, policy makers and transformation, political leaders in the democratic South Africa. Comrade Vijay was a patriot who loved his country and vowed never to rest until his people are freed from apartheid slavery. When called upon to serve his people, he stepped to the fore. When volunteers and activists were required for grassroots mobilization, he was amongst the first to be counted. For him, no task was a burden and no sacrifice was too high. For he loved his people, even as he understood that his call to duty carried a risk on his own life. He had chosen a lonely life in which he would never get a rest. This was a life of many youth of his time that the many youth of his time chose. It was not their design, but it was the only option. Who would stand and countenance the oppression and brutal suppression of our human rights of a people dispossessed of their land, subjugated by force and treated as serfs, as hewers of wood and drawers of water, their children denied equal and quality education, and destined to die of diseases of hunger and underdevelopment? Comrade Vejay joined many youth who in 1976 took to the streets to protest against inferior education. He was part of those students that had to take up the fight to prevent the closure of the medical school and to create a Bantustan-only university. He was amongst those that faced those batons and also had to dodge those snarling Alsatians and dodge the bullets of the apartheid police. As part of the University of Natal Black Section, as we called it, we actually turned and transformed the entire university into a nest for incubating freedom fighters. So it was not unusual to find many people who belong to various cells of Umkhonto weSizwe or the ANC underground. Depending on the Black Consciousness Movement, the assassination of Steve Biko, all of these radicalized the students, and he was at that time the president of the leader. He was a part of the leadership of the Students' Representative Council, serving as a president on his last years. And he converted all resources available and made them available to fight the campaigns of our political struggle outside the university. He was a fierce critic of the tricameral parliament. You have heard the story from Comrade Mac, how him and Amichan Rajpansi didn't see eye to eye. It comes from that. But he turned the university into the base for non-collaboration, producing leaflets and mobilizing students to go out and campaign for a boycott of the vote. And the students at the time had a culture of solidarity and working together with the workers and community struggles, and particularly went all out to support those struggles for better housing conditions under Durban Housing Action Committee, and also working with those other programs, Workers' Day celebration, Women's Rights, Women's Day celebration, and so on. He was always in the forefront, and this created a whole scene where a lot of attention was paid by this special branch. There was a lot of work done to inspire and mobilize students in various colleges and universities and in the high schools around Durban. And this we did as part of our students' work, where we used to go out to teach them maths and science and, of course, politics. So as medical students, it had been made very clear, I think Dr. Zweli Mkhize has put it very well, that the first step of improving quality of life of our people is to rebel against the national oppression and racial discrimination and overthrow the apartheid regime and ensure that our people have got a right to vote for the government of their choice. And that's the beginning of good health. And that is what brought all of us to start imagining equal health for all, and this was the basis of the national health insurance from those days as young students and activists, where we're looking at access to affordable quality of health care for all, irrespective of individuals' ability to pay or membership of the medical aid. This is an ideal that we have to continue to fight, because that was one of our fundamental beliefs as an expression of equality as in a free democratic dispensation. So Comrade Vejay believed in universal health coverage, that it will be achieved in our lifetime. It therefore remains for all of us who are here today to ensure that in our lifetime it still is achieved, even though he has left. Comrade Vejay qualified as a doctor and continued to practice medicine as a devoted doctor who worked closely and respected all the people that he worked with. But at the same time, during those days, when we had serious suppression, particularly the assassination of various leaders such as Griffiths Mkhize, Victoria Mkhize, and a number of MK combatants who were being executed, at that point, our people had no voice and the repression was extreme. That is the point at which many of our students were actually recruited into the underground. And Comrade Vejay was amongst those, but at the same time working with a number of other mass organizations guided, for example, by the Natal Indian Congress with various stalwarts such as Mewaram Kopin, George Supersad, Paul Davids, M.D. Naidu, and the Release Mandela campaign led by Archie Kumete, other unions, SAU, for SATU unions, all of this ultimately creating the whole big front, broad front, which UDF was ultimately formed of. He was amongst those who represented the health sector there, the NAMDA and the National Health Association. But at the same time, several waves of MK units were actually operating in the country, and each time one unit was wiped out, arrested, a new one would be brought into the country. At that point, the ANC's political and military operations had become integrated, and therefore in 1985, a new command was installed under Comrade Sihle Mbongwa, Kevin Koboshiane, and a few other comrades who had been brought into the country to assist, working with Comrade Vejay, Comrade Lulamile Kate, Comrades Bungseni Dlomo, and a number of other comrades who are too many to mention. And then the linked to the Swaziland side were also other comrades such as Comrade Raymond Lala, who are not able to be here, Comrade Terence Tryon, and other comrades, particularly under the leadership of Commander Chabungwenye, was called Tamizulu, and a few others since the assassination of Comrade Mtukuma and Zweli were in charge of the Natal machinery at the time. And in that whole overall command was led by the chairperson, who is Comrade Ibrahim. Unfortunately, he is also a bereavement and could not be here. He is the one by right who should be here, standing here, because he's the one who led us all. This was a butterfly operation that became an extensive operation in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, not only in Durban, in suburbs and townships and rural areas, but also moved up into Maritzburg and some of the towns in Maritzburg. Comrade Sibongiseni has read the tribute from Comrade Buma Zibuko, who survived in the bomb blast where Comrade Zinto Cele had died, who described how Comrade Vejay and Comrade Sandy tended his wounds when in fact there were helicopters hovering above looking for him and sending him more information. Whoever finds him must actually turn him over to the police. Many military activities were conducted, but eventually some of the units were uncovered, and therefore the arrest happened. As you have heard, the accused number one, Comrade Tutup Telezi, who was ultimately called by the media the pregnant bomber because she was arrested when in fact she was carrying her first baby. And of course, another young doctor who had not done internship, instead he went straight to prison without going through to do internship. One of the tragedies of that trial was the fact that there was a lot of documentation that had actually been left in Mozambique that came back and was part of the trial, which actually showed there was a huge challenge, infiltration at the higher levels. Comrade Merck has eloquently pointed out a number of other brave heroes, such as Comrade Pila Posha Ndwandwe, Pume Zunxiweni, Stanley Pila, and we have heard we still have not only this Comrade Pila, but a few other comrades whose bodies we still have not identified today, long after they died, and everything has been trying to try and find all of this. And Comrade Zondo was the one who actually saved the entire command from execution. definite execution, because the apartheid police came over and said to him, "We found your commanders, just give us a statement, we'll release you and they'll come in." And he said, "No, I've been already charged, I'm sentenced, and my comrades will not come because of me, and let the struggle continue." And that's the kind of bravery of the comrades that we're talking about. Of course, then it started, the long journey to Robben Island started with Comrade Vijay and the other comrades. Comrade Sibongiseni was talking the other day about how even Comrade Lulamile Tlate, everything had been done, in fact, that they were hoping that they've got someone who's going to nail everybody, and he stood across and walked in and looked at the comrades and said, "Well, these are my comrades, comrades don't betray each other." And then he was sentenced for refusing to testify. Another person who came in and said, these are the ones that we worked with. Comrade Tlate actually gave him a huge blow, and then as he called up, he was given 5 years, and he went out without being without giving evidence. He was given his own 5 years. Later on, they were trying to get the same comrades to turn against him. This is how treacherous this environment was at that time. But Comrade Vijay, as he went into Robben Island, even his passion as a doctor was never missed, and he was overawed to be in the midst and in the midst of all these icons that we have only sang about and only mouth slogans about, such as President Mandela and so on. And he was inspired by their sincerity and the principled leadership of Oliver Tambo, Ahmed Kathrada, and all others. And as he returned back, we've heard how he went out and took responsibility with the TRC, and he continued to work on the military, rising up to the head of South African Military Health Services. And in that process, he was the head, the Surgeon General. I recall this book when he was doing research on this book, where he was saying, but our story must be told. And the story was, when in fact there was a military conscription and white doctors were wearing uniform and working in the hospitals, we were also soldiers from another army working with the same ones, but no one knew that we were actually two sets of armies amongst the doctors serving our patients. It was said when in Pietermaritzburg, after the blast in Maseru, the doctors, the black doctors went and did a memorial service. On the other side, the white doctors put up a braai to celebrate the victory. But nothing gave Vijay as much joy and a sense of humility as the Surgeon General than to take charge of the health of the father of our nation, assisted by an able team of about 22 physicians, some of whom were part of the groups that we had actually grown up with and trained together. And of course, they were loyal to the end, and he kept updating us about the progress and how things were going on. Similarly, nothing has given him so much pain as the misunderstanding that arose with the writing of the book which he published, and how we wish that that matter could have been settled amicably. He was in the struggle for the long haul. He was not driven by greed or self-interest, and he never got consumed by factional tendencies that have ravaged our movement to make it barely recognizable. Leaders need to all be reminded that the ANC is not merely a passport to high office or self-enrichment, but it was a movement created for all our people as an instrument for liberation from oppression. Comrade Vijay leaves us at a time when our country is facing several crises that require honest and principled leadership that will confront challenges with courage without seeking popularity. Our ideal for freedom remains a dream until we have eradicated poverty, inequality, unemployment, and uprooted corruption. We have a challenge to eliminate crime and free our women from gender-based violence and femicides, in which many women lose their lives in the hands of the men that they once trusted. We need to stand up together and say not in our name. We bid him farewell under the constraint restrictions imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Whilst we embrace the optimism of a receding surge, we mourn the lives of those who have been lost in the invisible enemy. We salute all those dedicated health workers who have remained committed to the service of our nation during the time when we needed a combination of skills of health workers and soldiers in the forefront. As Minister, and as part of government, we do undertake to do everything in our power to protect all our health workers. On his passing, let us remind those in positions of power that the struggle cannot be over until we entrench good governance, eliminate corruption, achieve true non-racialism, non-sexism, equality, and justice prevails. This is what Comrade Lieutenant General Ramlakan dedicated his life to. Comrade Vijay was a well-rounded cadre. He was articulate, always managed to simplify difficult concepts to win confidence. In his entire life, he believed in non-racialism. He was completely unaware of what race he could belong to. He was a true African who believed in freedom, equality, unity, and democracy for all. He could be very naughty too. When the students were tired of attending meetings because of boycotts, he just went up and put up big posters there, says, sex, meeting, and then puts up a venue, and then all the students rushed there, but they didn't want to attend meeting, and all of a sudden, only to discover that no, the struggle continues, the boycott continues. He was a disciplined soldier. We have lost a humble servant of our people, a courageous soldier who fought gallantly and never betrayed our cause, but remained steadfast and loyal until his last breath. We salute you, Commander. You fought a good fight. Your mission is accomplished. We dip our revolutionary banner to honor you for your bravery and thank you for the services and the leadership. Soldiers never grieve and never mourn, for death is a fulfillment of a lifelong vow whose encounter is always expected. Let us pick up the spear and surge forward to battle. In remembrance of comrades, I'd like to share a short poem by Welterman Seri, and I want to say this: fallen warriors gone too soon, the best, the brave, the bold, and the bright. Like the comet thrust from the skies on a late summer night, men who's taken up the cause, giving us no less than their all. On behalf of the motherland, they have paid the ultimate price. We acknowledge now their families in memories of their sacrifice and of their story. Time will tell, for they shall be remembered well. And in the language of our ancestral warriors, we will say to you, "Uyadela wena usulapho." The struggle continues, alita continue. On behalf of the African National Congress, the comrades, fellow ex-combatants, we wish to convey our deepest condolences to his family, particularly the children, Rosa, Anisha, Kiran, Masana, and the rest of the family, Anand, siblings, Comrade Sandy, Comrade Charlotte, the community of Merebank, and all those who are associated with him. We thank you for giving him to the nation to serve. He has served us well, and for that we have to thank you. May his soul rest in peace. Hamba kahle mkhonto. Amandla.